As I was selecting the name for this episode, I came up with the greatest love of all, and it reminded me of that Whitney Houston song that I sang in high school. I will spare you. You are lucky. Hello, and welcome to Irresistible You Ignite Your Passion and Purpose. I'm Karen Seltz. I am your host. I'm super excited. February is the month of love. Tomorrow is Valentine's Day. And I thought I would dive into this topic of love. What the heck is it? How do we know if we are being loving or receiving love in the way that we really can feel it? And what exactly is the greatest love of all? Stay tuned to find out. I love it. So much fun. So I also wanted to celebrate with you that this week was my 3-year anniversary of hosting this show. This is the 144th episode that I've done over the course of 3 years. Yes, I skipped some if they were on Thanksgiving or Christmas, things like that. I even took a couple vacations, but thank you so much for watching and growing with me. I really hope that the topics that I've covered have served you, and I would love your input. Would love to hear from you. What would you like more of? Are there any topics that you would like any type of explanation that I might be able to cover, that I might be able to do some justice to? So anything to do with the subconscious mind, neuroscience, self-love, any type of love, any type of leadership, and of course, spirituality. Those are the places I love to play. So let's dive in. I believe that if you ask people what's the definition of unconditional love, you get a heck of a lot of different answers. And one that I really like, just one, is caring about the happiness of another person without any concern for what you're going to get back. So does that mean being selfless? Well, sometimes, but I also have these different quotes I'm going to bring in that I'm going to mess up because I don't have them written down. But in The Way of Mastery and in A Course of Miracles, there's something that says God would not ask his son to sacrifice. Now, what does that mean? I believe it means that we are not here to sacrifice. I know I'm going to get a lot of slack on that one, a lot of pushback. And hear me out. Okay, so what does it mean? We grow up learning how to please the people that are raising us, the people that are keeping us alive. And then we carry that tendency all through life with us until it doesn't work anymore. So many women especially become resentful because they're pleasing other people and they're not getting anything back. No one's asking them, well, what do you want? Or if they do say, what do you want? The woman will say like, oh, I don't care. What do you want? And I had this conversation with a friend of mine. She's been my accountability buddy for, 5 or 6 years now. And I was talking about in what I do now in rapid resolution therapy, I've been in training, right? Training, whatever. I've been mentoring under Dr. John Connolly, who I had on the show a few weeks ago, for a little over a year now. And in that time, I have done, I guess today it would be 186 RRT sessions for people, right? 186 sessions. And I was talking to another woman in training who has more training hours, right? Like, so more classroom hours than I do. And she asked me a question that I'm like, I tilt my head like a dog when I don't understand something. Like, that's an interesting question to ask me. You have more hours than I have. I said, how many sessions have you done so far? And she said, 1. And so I was telling my accountability buddy the story, and I said, I don't get it. Like, we have this great tool at our disposal that makes a tremendous difference for people. Why would people not share it? And she said, everybody's not like you. Everybody wasn't born being able to take risks and showing up and, being able to speak live on camera without preparation. I said, whoa. I said, I totally forgot that you didn't know me then before I did RRT as a client. And it just occurred to me that so much has shifted. And I just assume people know my before story because it ain't like this. I'll tell you that. Nothing like this. And I forgot. I forgot that people don't know. I just figured, you know, they knew that I wasn't always this way. And so I told her, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've totally forgot. You didn't know me then. I said, well, let me paint you a picture. I was the biggest people pleaser, the biggest actress. I was always changing what I said to make people like me, or at least try to make them like me. It didn't work. People read right through it, right? I'd be in a group and someone would say, what do you want to do? And I'd say, I don't know. What do you want to do? Or with one other person, I never knew. I was always flexible in doing what other people wanted to do to try to gain acceptance. Now, at some point, I decided I wanted to go into coaching, and I hired a business coach. And one of the things she said to do was to start doing Facebook Lives. And I was scared to death. I was so afraid of making a mistake and being judged. My biggest thing was looking stupid. I did not want to look stupid. That I have like a whole childhood bunch of stuff regarding that. You know, my brothers would play tricks on me and in front of company, and including like, oh, Karen, go grab the electric fence. It's not on, you know, and then they're all laughing at me as I'm stuck thinking I'm going to die there. So there's a lot of that stuff that we all have that accumulates through childhood that creates these paradigms in our minds of, you know, what we're willing to do. And one of mine was like, I had big time perfectionism. So I always wanted to look good on the outside, look good in front of other people. And by looking good, for me, it was more intelligence than like this, although this was part of it too, because I would get the, oh, you're going out like that, you know, if I didn't look a certain way for my mom. So it just reminded me that people don't know that I was constantly seeking. I have so many degrees and letters after my name because I never felt like I was enough. I always felt like, oh, if I don't know everything, someone's going to know something I don't know and I'm going to look stupid. There it is, right? So what shifted it? Lots of different things. So one of them was I obviously did this RRT. That was massive. Before that, I started going to these meetings called Real Love. And the quote that I used, or the definition for unconditional love, comes from this book, Real Love by Greg Bear. And I started learning to tell the truth about myself. I started learning what is this thing called unconditional love. And what we would practice doing, it was almost like a 12-step meeting or some type of, it was a support group really, but we would have one person speaking at a time. And the job of everyone else in the room was to love and accept them no matter what came out of their mouth. And you know what? It was pretty easy for me to do because I didn't have any expectations or attachment to these people. I didn't really know them. So for me, it's really easy to love people if I don't need anything or want anything from them. It's just pretty easy. Like, of course I can accept somebody. I can accept that they make these choices because that's the best they can do at any moment. So we would learn how to tell the truth. And this was the hard part for me, to admit my faults, to admit that I did anything that was stupid or wrong or shameful. And it took a lot of probing for me to actually get real, to stop, telling these surface level things like, oh, I did this. I mean, just like I used to tell really stupid things. And then one day the host called me out. She's like, why don't you tell us what you're afraid to tell us? What you think will make you unlovable? I'm like, oh, crap. And in that, those are moments I will always remember. So unconditional love, there's a lot of different components that I believe. And one is being loving. Now, being loving, in my definition, is accepting someone. You don't have to like hug them and kiss them. It's not necessarily an emotion, it's an action. So being loving is listening, not interrupting, allowing people the space to actually answer your questions, asking them questions. There's a lot of things you can do to be loving. even sending somebody a text like, hey, I was thinking about you, or calling people. What? Calling people on the phone? That's crazy. You're talking crazy, Karen. But I think it makes a big difference, that you let people know you're thinking about them. So in real love, there are definitions where, okay, being loving. Yeah, a lot of us have that down. We're always there. We're givers, right? The second piece was being loved, allowing people the opportunity to love you, which for me now includes asking for it when I want it or need it. Like, hey, I could use support. Do you have the capacity? I love that term. Do you have the capacity? It's not personal. If somebody that's in my circle is going through something, they may not have capacity to hold the stuff that I want to get out. So I give them that option, like, hey, I'm feeling messy, or I'm processing something, I'm lonely, I'm whatever it is. Do you have the capacity to support me? And they answer yes or no. And for me, like I've done it so much that it doesn't feel personal at all. I really appreciate it, because if somebody doesn't have capacity and they pick up the phone and I dump on them, they're going to be resentful, I believe, whether they're aware of it or not. Unconsciously, they're going to be like, oh crap, it's Karen calling, right? So that's why I like to give people a warning when I call them for support. When I'm feeling messy, I want them to know what they're getting. So I believe that it's respectful, and I don't know, I like it. I kind of appreciate it too. When my friends call me, or anybody really, I just feel into it. It's like from heart to stomach. Like if the phone rings, in fact, that happened recently. It was somebody who wanted to work with me, and I didn't know the number, and I just got yes, answer the phone. And it was a lovely person, a lovely woman. So there's a lot to that piece about having capacity and honoring your own capacity. Like if I don't have it for my friends, I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't have it right now. And that's it. I don't need to explain myself. They don't need an explanation. They need someone to support them. Is it my job to support my friends 24/7? No, it's their job to have a network of people. So if one person doesn't have capacity, they call another one, right? And it's my job to have my own network. So being loving, being loved, and the third leg of the stool of love is being responsible. There's a lot to being responsible. Part of it for me is it's not just for how I'm showing up, but part of it for me is integrity. Am I being in integrity with my word? Am I doing what I say I'm going to do when I say I'm going to do it? And if not, am I renegotiating ahead of time? So let me give you an example of that, because that might have made no sense at all. So if I say to you, I will meet you at 7:00 at this restaurant, and I hit traffic, and I didn't plan ahead for traffic because, I don't do that. I'm me. I will call and say, hey, I hit traffic. I'm running this many minutes late. Is that okay with you? So I'm renegotiating. I don't call them at 7 or text them at 7 like, oh, I'm running 20 minutes late. I give people a heads up as soon as I know. Or if I make a promise, somebody asked me to do something, and in the moment, I was like feeling good. It felt good. And then later I check in. I'm like, you know what? Doesn't feel good to me anymore. It doesn't feel in alignment. I call that person the moment I get that feeling and say, hey, you know what? I know I said I wanted to do that and I would do it, and it's not feeling good to me anymore. That's what I say. You know what? I'm going to back out. It doesn't feel in alignment for me. And I believe people appreciate that. I appreciate it when people do it rather than make up excuses. You are smart. You can tell when people are bullshitting. I'm smart. I can tell when people are bullshitting. We had some friends that used to do that all the time. Like, oh no, she has a headache. I would ask if my daughter could go over there and play. Oh no, my daughter has a headache right now. And then we'd drive by and see her out playing on her bike. Like, just say no. Just tell the truth. So being responsible, there's a lot of components to it. I think integrity is a big one. When I say to my clients, I am responsible for causing a shift for you. What that does for me is gives me power to create it. And it also kind of puts my ass on the line so that, you ever have a deadline and you're like, I don't know how I'm going to get this done. And you do, because your ass is on the line and your creativity kicks in almost because you have to. And it's fun. It's exciting, right? You get that adrenaline going. So when I'm in a session and I tell people, this is what I'm expecting, this is what I'm intending, this is what I am responsible for causing, I can see the wheels turning. Usually most people are like, what? And they don't get it at first. They're like, what do you mean you're responsible for causing it? Isn't that my job? Like, no, this isn't therapy. We're not going to talk about, why you're so messed up. We're not going to talk about any of that. We're going to talk about how we're going to shift it, right? Like what we're doing, where we're going. So the other part, right, is when they get it, there's like this, oh, it's not up to me, and they can relax. They can relax and finally let someone pour into them, let someone else drive. Because, I don't know about you, but I have done an awful lot of controlling in my life and it's exhausting. It's exhausting holding up all the plates, right, that are spinning. And they certainly wouldn't keep spinning if I did it like that. I got to learn how to spin plates better. I guess with the poles, right? You're used to me. I go on tangents. So love, I believe the greatest love of all is truly loving yourself. Now, what does that mean? It means accepting every single part of yourself, all of the characteristics, because I hate to break it to you, we all have every single characteristic within us. Some are expressed more, some are repressed more. And when they're repressed, they are projected onto other people, which is extremely unloving, because the moment you criticize another person, there's nothing outside of you. So your unconscious mind, all your body, every single cell in your body receives those words of criticism. It affects your physiology. It affects your health. It affects your mental health, your happiness, your peace, obviously your nervous system. All of it gets affected. So when you are loving to yourself, you're also loving to other people. So one of the things I used to do when I taught or coached leadership was when people had beef with another person, I'm like, okay, you want to play? And they're like, no, but I will. I would say, okay, skip what they did. Okay, tell me what kind of person, what characteristics were they exhibiting when they did these things they did? So, I mean, it could be like a murderer, right? Like, obviously, you are not going to murder anyone, right? You're just not. But what kind of characteristics does a murderer have? Hateful, selfish, like you can just name them. So we would get all these characteristics, and I'd say, okay, tell me a time that you were hateful. And they'd immediately like, oh, crap. Well, right now with this person, tell me the time you wanted to kill someone. Well, right now with this right? Like, or whatever. Oh yeah, this time in high school or that time. We all have had every single thought. We've all been every single characteristic. We've all used them. You can't escape it. When you repress them or think certain parts are unwanted or unlovable, they're going to come out sideways. So when you get triggered, and you'll get triggered a lot if you're repressing things, because you're going to see it everywhere. Like, oh, that person cut me off in line. He's selfish. For me, that was a big trigger. If my mom called me selfish, I just felt like the worst person on earth, like I wasn't lovable. So that was when I saw everywhere, until I'm like, yeah, I love you, you little selfish bitch. Mwah. Like I just brought that piece back in, because part of it, I've used this analogy in the past, but when we're saying like, it's not okay for me to be selfish. If I'm selfish, nobody will love me. And it's like looking down and taking a hunk out and like ripping it out and tossing it aside. And it's not okay for me to be a bitch. So you take out a piece and you throw it and you look down, you're full of holes. And when you are full of holes, you feel like you're incomplete and you need other people or other things to complete you. I need success. I need money. I need men. I need beautiful clothes. I need a perfect body. I need praise. I need And it's an endless amount of stuff. Nothing will ever fill those holes. The only way to fill them is to bring those pieces back and to integrate them in. And that is so, so loving. And everyone around you is going to appreciate it because you're going to stop like projecting your bullshit onto them. Trust me, it's going to be really good for you. So how do you know what you are rejecting, what pieces of yourself? There's an exercise you can do, and I call it like a judgment journal. You can carry around like a little tiny notebook, and at the top of one page, you write my judgments about myself. And then you skip a few pages, depending on how small the notebook is. And then you go to the top of another page, my judgments about others. Now, do this for about a week and start to notice the patterns. And I'll give you the key now because I probably won't remember to do it later. So when you go back to it, here's the key. Your judgments about yourself are coming from your conscious mind. You are aware that you believe these things about yourself. Your judgments about others, and this is where it gets really chaotic, because you could be like, oh, she's fat, she's skinny, she's ugly, she's pretty. They're all your subconscious judgments of yourself, of you. So they're super contradictory depending on when they got in there, right? Like there was a time in your life when you were skinny, there was a time in your life when you were fat, like whatever it is, time in life you thought you were ugly, your time in your life you thought you were pretty. It's all in there and it gets stuck there. So it's really those unintegrated pieces, the stuff that you're unconscious to, that you get to bring back. And one thing that really supports me to do this, and many of my clients, is what is the gift of this characteristic? Like bitch, for example. When is it good to be a bitch? Well, when you have a contractor and they do substandard work and being nice isn't working, it's not getting you anywhere. You get to be direct, you get to be firm. And some men consider that to be bitchy. Too freaking bad, right? Like too bad. So every single one of those characteristics has a gift. And here's the other part. So what is the exact opposite of that characteristic that you thought was negative? So me, my big one was selfish. So when I was rejecting being selfish, I was giving all my energy, all my time away, which means I had nothing left. So if there was something I really cared about, I had nothing left to be generous. So for me, selfish and generous were two sides of the same coin. So when you reject one, you cannot fully embody the other side of the coin. So think about what you're missing by trying to be happy all the time. You're rejecting sad. You can't fully be happy because you're waiting for the other shoe to drop or something. Like you can't fully embody it. But if you go all in and be sad, like just like cry, and then it creates this opening where this joy just like bubbles up and is exuberant. It's like I get to express it. So that's the beauty of this. None of them is the unwanted stepchild. They're all parts of you. They're all just as valuable. So it's like treating them that with value, you begin to feel whole again because nothing's unacceptable. Then you can show up. You can go live on Facebook, whatever, who cares, right? So that's part of it. The other part for me was a big spiritual component, and that is there are times in my life I was doing things that I was so ashamed of that I thought, if there is a God, there is no way that he or she or it could love me. And so I completely shut the door. I rejected God. I'm like, nope. If I don't look at you, you can't see me. You can't see me. And I realized that there was love that was always there for me. God is like that parent that has open arms that are always waiting for you. God, spirit, source, universe, whatever you want to call it. And I had been rejecting it. I'd be like, nope, I'm not lovable. There's no way you could love me. But how do I know? Like God is love. How could God not love me? It's impossible for God to not love me. It's impossible for God to not love you. You are love. You are made of the same stuff that God's made out of. We're the same. We're like integrated. In Course in Miracles and Way of Mastery, it says, my Father and I are one. I take that at face value. We are one. And I love this metaphor. They liken it to the ocean, like God's love is the ocean. God is the ocean. And we as individuals, we wanted to know what it was like to have an experience, to individuate, to come into a form, into a body. So we're like that little drop of foam on the tip of a wave. But then we go back to the ocean. We're just like, oh, wait, I need a little more experience of separation. And then we go back to source. And I think about that. Like, have you ever had those moments where you felt your oneness with God, with all that is? For me, that started in the way of mastery. There's a lot of little exercises that are really super helpful. And one is a meditation. And it goes like this. As you breathe in, I accept. And as you breathe out, the love of God. I accept the love of God. And you can say whatever you want, the love of Buddha, the love of Kuan Yin. When I started doing that 5 minutes a day, just 5, everything shifted for me. I really had this deep, profound realization that if I was acceptable to God, if God could love me and God was choosing to love me, then it didn't matter so much what anybody else thought. And if God could love me, I could love myself. So that was a huge part for me of really feeling like I could be lovable. And then moving from I guess I could be. And then if God could love me, well, I must be lovable. And then it really occurred to me, God is love. I am love. That this was an illusion, that God could possibly ever not love me. It's impossible. It doesn't matter. I never had to earn it, ever. That's a human construct, earning love, like being good to get love. And if you're bad, you get punished and you get rejected and, put in timeout or whatever, and rejected, like cut off from love. And I know many of us experienced that growing up, including me. So I really thought I had to earn God's love, or to be good, or to be like Christian-like, or whatever, do good things. And, doing what I was doing, I'm like, no way. And it's not about that. You can't earn it. There's nothing you can do to earn God's love. There's nothing you can do to dis-earn it. Like, it's just there. So the prayer, the meditation is, I accept the love of God. It's always been there. It's up to you whether you want to accept it or not. And I tell you, it changed the cells in my body. Like, I felt different, and I still feel different. And I have had mystical experiences during meditations where I definitely felt my oneness with God. I felt my oneness with everybody, with everything, with the sand, the beach, the sky, the birds, the trees. And for me, like, my whole body was vibrating with truth. So try that out, that I accept the love of God, and let me know how it goes for you. It's not always instant, and it's difficult. Like, at first, if you're doing things and you were taught like, oh, good girls or good boys don't do that, then, see what happens, but stick with it, because eventually there comes a moment in time, at least for me, and I'm guessing for you, that it's like, oh, it's always been there. I've been rejecting it. It's a choice for me to accept it. So see what happens. And I am sending you all so much love. And I can say this authentically from the bottom of my heart. I love you. Thank you so much for being you. There's not another single person on this earth that is like you. And you are here. Because you are here, that means that this world needs you, or else you wouldn't be here. So remember that, and really honor yourself and your unique gifts and what you're here to do, your contributions to this world. Thank you so much for watching Irresistible You, Ignite Your Passion and Purpose. I'm Karen Seltz. I'll see you right here next week. Happy Valentine's Day. Bye.